things like, other people say that the Bible is not inspired. And he goes, he would say, I acknowledge it is in New Jersey. So it went on like that, then sort of double talk all the way through the lecture, and the police just sat there and said, okay, this is what we can't touch him with this, and they ended up applauding him.
You could use the O.J. Simpson tactic of saying, I don't believe this, but if I did,
If I
here's
did.
why I would do it.
If I were an infidel. Go ahead.
One state he wouldn't go into was Delaware.
Well, you know,
Because they promised him they would, but the one in they were there to arrest him, but in Delaware he wouldn't go because they said they would certainly arrest him.
Chief Justice Conges, I think was the name, because he did deliver a lecture in Delaware. I believe it was Wilmington. And after he was done, there was an indictment, threatened at least. I'm not sure what the status was. But no, he didn't go back to Delaware for several years. But in the 1890s, he did. He was in Delaware. I have a lecture that he did subsequently. Maybe it was after Chief Justice Conges was gone. I'm not sure. But yeah, he did go back to Delaware. So anything else?
By the way, it was Margaret Sanger's father who arranged the incorporating for
correct.
Ingersol to go there.
At least according to Margaret Sanger's biography. Unfortunately, I'm looking for that one. That's one I've got a list of like 5 of these things that are just, I really want to find out about them. I haven't found any coverage of that though, of that lecture. I have a subsequent lecture recording, but not the one that she talks about. I'm really looking for that one.
How are these speaking tours arranged? I mean, typically if someone's going out these days, it's to promote a book or to speak on one current theme, whereas he would be speaking the next day in a different town on a completely different subject.
Right.
So what was the sort of, I guess, how did they structure these?
They were set up at least a month in advance. I know that from newspaper coverage, they would typically have announcements that he's going to speak next month. And he had a manager. Sometimes his manager was his brother-in-law, Farrell. Sometimes there was a man named Redpath, who was Mr. Redpath, who was his manager. And again, they would set up what the available theaters were. There was all the logistics involved of it takes so long to travel from A to B. And so clearly that sort of legwork was being done in advance. So.
And then he just kind of spoke on whatever he felt like speaking on? Or?
I don't know how the actual topics were decided upon. He had a repertoire, and you can see as time goes on, it changes. He had a current one in 1884. It was orthodoxy. As he wrote the different things, the fresh ones, he would deliver the fresh ones. A lot of times when he went into a little small town and never had been there before, he would deliver liberty. It was his favorite talk, and he always liked to deliver that first. I've noticed when he spoke. Go ahead, Tom.
In this connection, I think it's important to keep in mind that the popular idea of the lecture and its place as a medium of education and entertainment was very different then. Today we think of a speaker series as being somebody goes out and speaks to promote their book or promote a movie, and something else is really the product. Right. In those days, the lecture was the main event. And a great orator coming to town to speak on topic XYZ was an event in and of itself.
Because you got to remember, you don't have TV, you don't have radio, you don't have movies. People were hungry for some kind of entertainment, and this was the entertainment. So you'll have Mark Twain doing the same thing. You'll have all manner of speakers going around, explorers talking on their topic, as well as circuses, theater. Then there was a whole circuit of theaters and performances that went around through them. So I noticed the same performances, not just Ingersol. As I'm looking at these papers, these little papers, I see the same performers going and performing in different towns. So
I wonder if one reason for a difference in the reception in the U.S. and Canada was that when Ingersol first really emerged into the public consciousness in the United States, he was as well known as a crusader for the Union cause and as a political speech maker.
That's correct.
As he was for his unorthodox materials. Whereas he kind of came into Canada as the great iconoclast.
That's true, because his speaking tours, and I know he gave speeches, lectures in his local area, in and around Peoria, before 1876. But he really took off only after the speech in the Cincinnati Convention there, 1876, where he gave the Plume Night speech. That's when he really started. And the other thing, he was already doing that tour. He was already did a tour, a political tour in 1876, right after he was speaking for Rutherford Hayes.
Yeah, of course, he wouldn't have been getting tapped to do something like put a name in nomination at the convention if he hadn't earned some pretty good
He'd already earned
jobs
it.
already.
He'd already earned it in the Peoria area. This is true. So, anything else? One more.
Who were Ingersoll's heroes? Who were his influences? Did he quote other people, or did he just come up with this stuff on his own? Or?
Well, you can see he read widely. He had a library. There's a story that somebody came and looked at his library and asked him how much did all these books cost him, and he said, the presidency of the United States. No, Voltaire, Humboldt, he was reading Darwin, he was reading all manner of things. As far as the theological, you can look to Burns, you can look to, there's any number of sources. I don't really know. So.
Probably the heroes that he spoke of most were Voltaire and Humboldt on the theological side, and his literary influences. He gave his principal gratitude to Shakespeare and Robert Burns. I think a lot of his theological thinking probably was original, based on many years of thinking over and rejecting the stuff he'd learned from his father. That there doesn't seem to be a highly visible theological reference. That really seems to be him.
His war experiences and seeing that, those atrocities, do you think that added to his view of
It may have. He was fairly reticent about talking about the impact of the Civil War experience, as a lot of the veterans were. I mean, we didn't have Oprah yet. And, you look back at the history, there's this real lacuna, it's a conspiracy of silence almost. Well, similar to the way that nobody in Germany after World War II really wanted to talk about their experiences. And the North had won, but it was still very traumatic.
By the way, Margaret Sanger's father paid a price for bringing Ingersol to.
That he did. I believe
Yeah,
he
he
was
lost.
business.
He was carved monuments for the. He was a Catholic in the cemetery. After that, he lost. He had to travel out of town
This is
to
correct.
do work.
I know that about him.
She was only about 11 years old when Ingersol.
I wish I knew exactly how old she was.
Pardon?
I wish I knew exactly how old she was when that happened.
Well, I'll
Because that would be a
tell you
clue.
tomorrow.
I was looking
She
for
was very
clues.
young. She talked about it just tagging along with him, being
Yeah.
sort of dragged because she couldn't walk as fast.
I pegged her somewhere between 4 and 12 years old.
And that's a whole other area of controversy, because the chapter in Sanger's autobiography about her early childhood is historically fairly incoherent. Some critics say parts of it are self-serving, and others just say she didn't really, conform her childhood recollections to any sort of historical source. So Doug and I have spent a little bit of time trying to figure out how old she was, and she drops one hint about going to one school that would indicate she was a certain age, and then the next paragraph she's walking to a different school that would say she was a different age, and it's difficult to reconstruct, and it could have been anywhere, probably within a span of about 4 years. Makes it tough to nail down. What we do know is that on the site where she was born, there's a lovely Wegmans now. And you can get groceries there.
Probably maybe contraceptives.
Good be.
Thank you very much.